There are a lot of things that leftists do and say that are very reactionary. Here are a few examples. Saying that the privileged position given to literacy is a Western colonial thing. The written word existed before Europe was even a concept, and even oral traditions had systems of inscription through tattoos, embroidery, or painting. Text is literally the single most important aspect of culture making for humans, of keeping ancestral wisdom, of teaching the young how to learn. And yes, there is a lot that can be said on the ways in which colonialism has utilized literacy as a weapon against indigenous people, and how language itself, as a systems of science, enforce colonial social codes. Confusing this with text is not important is a form of reactionary imperialism of thought. The same way goes for this anti-intellectualism that I absolutely despise, that I see in leftist spaces. This whole idea of accessibility is driving me crazy, because what is accessible exactly? It is our job to get into conversations that have been happening for thousands of years with its own conceptual language and make ourselves understand and learn the new conceptual language. It's not supposed to be accessible. And I would argue that when it is accessible, it is locking you inside of the pre-existing meanings that come already made with language instead of opening you up to new ways of thinking. There is a very particular value to engaging with difficult literature that opens your brain, that opens your head, that breaks your head open to new forms of meaning, to becoming the meaning maker of what you are reading, of what you are interacting with, of the world around you. That builds mental fortitude, that allows you to have a methodology, a kind of sift through which you see and discern the information that you're bumping against, instead of just being an open book that accepts everything with no discernment, which is what fascism is made of. It's basically this. It's walking around the world with no method, with no metacognition skills, no critical thinking skills, without the desire to learn and to listen and to understand. The principle we're operating from is that all intelligence is equal. There is only difference in will and in application. The same intelligence permeates the entire cosmos that you are made of, that you are part of, that you are. Consciousness is not intelligence itself, merely a residue that takes credit for it at the end of the journey. Your body knows how to live, how to love, how to think, and even how to die before you are even aware that you exist as a subject. The baby's mouth feels charged towards the breast. Contact is made. A flow of milk starts. A satisfaction is being recorded in the psyche. The mouth detaches. Flow of milk stop. New connections are possible. Mouth finger, mouth dirt, mouth sound. None of this happens with the self-awareness of I'm a baby, my name is X, I'm hungry, and I shall strive for milk. It's the intelligence that flows through all of these alive matter before subjectivity comes at the end of the process and takes credit for it. Oh, it was me all along. I wanted milk. I am this. I am that. The same intelligence through which trees know how to share resources with each other. Mycelial networks know how to care for the entire forest and send electrical signals to respond to a wound is flowing through you. It is you. Why then do people seem to differ so wildly in intellectual ability? Or at least, why is this a reality that we observe? Well, do they? Or is it that they differ only in the intensity of will, the variety of application of intelligence, the desire, the levels of desire to learn, to understand, to communicate? Is it that people are inherently born with levels of intelligence? Or is it that all intelligence is equal and different material conditions generate different intensities of will and can either repress or amplify it? In the book The Ignorant Schoolmaster, Jacques Ressier explores how an illiterate peasant father is able to test his son's learning abilities by simply observing. By paying attention to the way his son explains what he understands from the text, he can know if his son actually read the text or not, even though he himself cannot read. This is because everything is in everything. You can learn anything about anything through anything. The father's knowledge of the working of the field, making shoes, communicating with people daily, making love to his wife, whatever, all include the bodily intelligence that is required to notice if his son actually read the text, made a genuine effort to understand it through his own bodily faculties and intelligence, or is he merely projecting his existing frame of thinking into it or making something up? It's an interesting thing, no? In our weekly reading in Anti-Oedipus, which by the way you can join on our Discord, we practice intellectual emancipation by, instead of me explaining what the text is saying, which is very tempting considering it is one of the most dense and difficult philosophical works out there, instead we, for once, read together and let people attempt at the understanding of the text on their own and help each other do it together, and two, build together a visual diagram of the entire book, paragraph by paragraph, where we can add everyone's reflections, examples, and notes. In my own life, I practice intellectual emancipation in many ways, including through metacognition, the practice of thinking about my own thinking. I often ask myself, how was this thought generated? Through what social, historic, political, and economic processes that I can name that thought has been generated? What is it connected to? What assumptions, presuppositions, and logical conclusions it is hiding? What alternative thoughts can exist on the same thing? Is this an amplifying or repressing thought? What realities this thought generates? For example, if I notice myself thinking, I am a hothead, so quick to anger, I need to work on myself. How has this thought been generated? Probably because I felt some judgment towards my impulsive reaction. Someone somewhere told me this is anger and this is bad. There is an entire mechanism of suppression of the vitality of our emotions and natural responses by moralizing them into good and bad emotional reactions. What assumptions, presuppositions, and logical conclusions is it hiding? The most obvious assumption is that I exist as a full fixed subject that is a hothead. Also, that anger is this simple unity and not a multiplicity of intensities, mostly unintelligible. It also presupposes agency, as if I choose my emotional reactions and can choose them differently. The logical conclusion is that anger is bad. Maybe that I am bad. What alternative thoughts can exist on the same thing? Perhaps instead of moralizing this bundle of intensities that appeared in my body, we can develop a method through which to play with it. What has evoked this reaction? What are the actual states of the bodies and realities and situational reality that I can look at that evoke that reaction? Is it reaction proportionate? Is it calibrated to the actual reality that I'm facing, to the state of my body? Or is it that together with the emotion, I'm also buying all of the future projections and the inherent, already ready meaning that is assigned to it, the interpretation of the thing, right? Maybe I'm just responding to yet another experience of my own repression under capitalism. What usefulness can this anger have if applied creatively? Let's say to rage against the machine. The practice of metacognition, which I just demonstrated here with you, open up thought itself to be more nomadic. We see infinite potential in places of rigid identities and moral judgments. We need this kind of nomadism in order to build viable alternatives to a system that, in its very nature, enforces its own logics and meanings as the only possible horizon. We need more complex systemic thinkers. Let me tell you a little story. The other day, someone invited me for a drink. Now, I usually would not go on a random drink with someone who just reached out to me and slid into my DM on Instagram. But since I live in a small town, we're in the same place, I had previous positive experiences when people come from my Instagram where they see what I'm all about, how I'm fighting fascism, and that I was born in Palestine on the privileged side of the conflict, and I'm anti-Zionist and all that stuff. And I was like, okay, you know what? Why not? Let's make a new friend. As I'm sitting down, like literally as I'm sitting down, she's asking me, so where are you from? So as usual, I'm saying I was born in what's now called Israel. I'm an anti-Zionist. I'm, free Palestine, fuck Israel, all that stuff. The next thing that she said is like a red flag. She said something obscure and kind of open to interpretation. She said something like, it's interesting, like there is always an other narrative, a less known narrative in every situation. Immediately all of my, you know, critical thinking red flags are like ding 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 ding. What the fuck does it even mean? Usually when people say something like that, they're about to say the most insane thing. But I was like, I'll bite. What do you mean by that? And then literally, this woman looks me in my eye sockets and says, think about Hitler, for example. And I'm immediately like, what the fuck? Maybe he was onto something. She continues. And I'm like, God damn it. What the actual fuck? Now, the interesting thing is that this is not a case of someone who is a fascist as a kind of well thought of strategy. Not that I think that that thing even exists, but this is one of the cases of someone who says and believes genuinely moronic things because they have a vapid, whitewashed spiritual practice that made them into a person that has absolutely no sift through which they discern the reality. They just see information as it comes, see impressions from reality as they come, and either accept or reject them based on vibes. Does it feel good? Does it feel bad? It's like these spasms of pleasure and displeasure through which they move around. They have no other method, no other sift, no other system of thinking about their own thoughts, of through which they can navigate reality and discern, you know, what agenda is related to this narrative that someone is pushing. What are they connected to? What systemic thing is it part of? What realities is it going to generate, right? And I think this is exactly what fascism is. It's this relationships without desire. It's not that she's stupid. It's not that she's inherently moron, right? The same intelligence that flows through me flows through her. The problem is that between us, there is the absence of the desire to communicate, to learn, to understand, to be understood, that is the will to intelligence, the will of intelligence. I noticed in our conversation that no matter what I was saying, she was not understanding what I'm talking about and instead spewing completely unrelated stuff from the ether. That I'm sure for her made sense in her completely confused mind, but nevertheless, she tried to make literally to my face, tried to make the argument of comparing eugenics, the practice of getting rid of so-called inferior genes, to weeding off invasive species in your garden. I'm serious. Now, of course, once I didn't take any of that shit, and I was like, are you literally comparing the murder of my ancestors in Auschwitz, the gassing of my ancestors in Auschwitz, to weeding your garden? Are you absolutely out of your mind? Of course, at that point, she started gaslighting me and backtracking, and like, I didn't mean it, I didn't say it, da da da. But ultimately, that is the operation that is happening there. I don't think that she thinks that this is the argument that she's making. She just doesn't have the will. The same intelligence, no will. And that is how fascism thrives. That is exactly how it works. Let's think about something together. Let's practice what we are talking about together. I'll pose a question, and you will share your thoughts in the comments. And I will write something about this tomorrow and post it as another essay. I'll ask you questions. You go research it. You go think about it. Use your own cognitive faculties. Use your own ability to think about your own thoughts. Use your own direct empirical observations through your own body. Everything that you know and everything that you have access to know. And I ask you this. Tell me, why do people work so hard for their own servitude as if it was their salvation? Why do people keep choosing the most vile politicians to represent them? Go towards fascism again and again and again. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. If you want to support this channel, you can go read the essays in text, practice what we're talking about here on Substack. You can also go on Patreon. This is where we are going to go live every month, do a study group together in group and get into the themes of these essays in more depth. And when you subscribe, nothing is behind a paywall forever, for free to everyone. But when you subscribe and you pledge, even if it's just $5 a month, this helps me drastically, not just to sustain myself and continue doing this work, but also to directly fund all the post-capitalist infrastructure that I'm building in real time through my land project, the Tech That Liberates project that we are getting into, the reading groups, when we practice intellectual emancipation, all that cool shit. You can also participate and be part of any of that by you joining us on Discord. Yeah, see you soon. Much love.